we're dealing with a topic that is, top of mind even at this time, as COVID has maybe catapulted us into this digital space and appreciating the importance of technology even more so before because of the fact that we've been at home. We've gone through various lockdowns. We've had to change the mode of delivery of our goods and services to using the technology. And so we have a greater awareness at this time, I think, to the significance of the digital space. And so to help us to distill this and understand this even further, we have Dr. Annalie Babb, who will share with us on this critical topic. Now, a little bit about Dr. Babb. She has a very lengthy bio, but I'm going to just take out some of the salient points. Dr. Babb is an international consultant with more than 17 years experience specializing in digital transformation, innovation, digital media, investment, and export promotion. Dr. Babb is currently the Prime Minister's Special Envoy and the Special Advisor to the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Smart Technology. In that capacity, she leads the team developing the COVID public health emergency management solutions for Barbados. She was also the legislative co-chair for the development of a national digital identity and mobile ID. She's led on the creation of a Barbados Tech Accelerator for the delivery of digital public services and was chair of government's telecoms working group. In 2020, she also chaired the Digital Transformation and Solutions Committee of the Prime Minister's Jobs and Investment Council, formed to develop a national innovation and technology response to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on our country. Dr. Babb currently sits on the board of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Martindale's Road. So this is just a very short uh, bio sketch on our presenter today. And I'm sure you will agree that from that introduction, we have someone who is very versed in this area of digitalization. And I will say to you that I could have thought of no one else better to address our topic today. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let me invite Dr. Annalie Babb to present on the topic today, innovation through digitalization. Dr. Babb?
Thank you so much, Senator Dr. Lynette Holder. I have to give you your titles. It is a pleasure to be here today. I also thank the SBA, yourself, for the introduction. And I do want to say to you that I see you as a constant and a dependable force representing small business in Barbados. You are ever attuned to the needs of the moment. And the fact that you've asked me to speak on this subject today demonstrates that. So thank everyone joining us online. We appreciate you, and we appreciate your taking the time to spend with us today. As I complete my 3-year term as Special Envoy and Special Advisor, I'd like to thank the Prime Minister, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, and the Government of Barbados generally for the opportunity to have served. And I'd like to add a disclaimer that I'm sharing with you today from my experience over the last 17, 18 years in Barbados, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister, the Minister, or government. But like me, many people are pivoting during this season of extreme global upheaval. There are opportunities to be leveraged if we're willing to confront what I call the challenge to change. So today we're going to talk about innovation through digitalization, monetizing innovation in the digital space. And just a few basic definitions. A lot of people, I think, don't understand that innovation is disruptive. is the successful exploitation of new ideas, creating new solutions, products, processes, services that people are willing to pay for. Digitalization is simply making content or solutions, products, services available in electronic formats, online, on computers, etc. And obviously, I think we're all familiar with the notion of monetizing, which is making money from the value that we create. So when I think about the challenge to change and our challenge to change, we need to understand that innovation is about creating value that people and markets recognize and are willing to adopt. In other words, I could have a brilliant idea, but if nobody catches on to the idea, if they're not interested in it, it's not innovation. Innovation is when people buy into what you are making or selling or producing or creating. And it is highly disruptive. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. As Ralph Ardell reminds us, true innovation is not just about changing a product, a service, or even a marketplace. It's also about recognizing and relishing the need to change yourself. So if we want to position Barbados as a value-creating nation, we have to be more comfortable thinking critically, interrogating ourselves, asking difficult questions. We ought to question, for example, who we are, how we do what we do, and why we do things the way we do them. We ought to question our beliefs, or assumptions, or motivations, or intentions, or worldviews, again, our ways of doing things, and above all else, I think, our ways of treating people. We also ought to be willing to question the way the world works, the way Barbados works, and not be so passive as a nation. Now, why is this so important? To answer the question, allow me to take a tiny detour and tell you a little bit about UNCTAD 15's Creative Industries Trade Digitization Forum, which is to be hosted by Barbados later this year. UNCTAD is the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It was created in 1964 as a permanent United Nations body. It meets every 4 years at the ministerial level. Its mission is to maximize trade, investment, and development opportunities for developing countries and help them integrate into the global community on an equitable basis. To do so, UNCTAD formulates development policies on trade, aid, transport, finance, investment, technology, etc. Now, this October, UNCTAD's 15th ministerial will be hosted by Barbados. It was supposed to be held last year, but had to be rescheduled because of COVID. Now, also because of COVID, this year's conference will be virtual. It will have several side events, including a combined creative industries trade digitization forum. Now, originally, back I think in about 2019, the Prime Minister designated Mr. Adrian Green lead organizer of a creative industries forum to accompany the UNCTAD ministerial. And she made me lead organizer of a trade digitization forum. But Adrian and I decided to combine the two forums because it just makes sense. And our vision, which is going to hopefully be carried out in October, is to reimagine the creative industries, the industrialization of creativity and technological innovation in ways that are appropriate to small islands and developing countries in what is emerging as a new order in the world post-COVID. So there's about 7 objectives that we have listed for this combined creative industries trade digitization forum. To create income generating opportunities for those in the creative and tech sectors through forum planning and execution now. To rethink, redefine, reposition, expand our creative and tech sectors in appropriate emerging niche areas and markets, to empower us all to think more creatively, be more innovative, believe in our capacity to solve our own problems, to design, develop, support homegrown solutions that help people with ideas spawn sustainable businesses and marketable value, to put creativity, culture, technology, and wellness at the heart of Caribbean economic, social, and cultural transformation, and to forge greater unity, stronger communities of creative and business practice. And finally, to expand thinking around the philosophical, historical, ideological dimensions of technology, creativity, wellness, innovation, and trade. But why the last objective around expanding thinking about philosophical, ideological, and historical dimensions of technology, creativity, wellness, innovation, and trade? Now, even experts today from so-called developed countries admit that colonial trade networks persist in the South, quote unquote, in the South today. This is in developing countries or less advanced economies. And these colonial trade networks focus on extractive value, meaning taken out of and not nurturing or putting in. So I don't believe that we can look today at innovation through digitalization, monetizing innovation in the digital space, without addressing Barbados's history as an extractive plantation economy or colonial entrepot. Now, according to Wikipedia, an entrepot is a duty-free port with a high volume of re-export trade. The word means, quote unquote, warehouse in modern French, and comes from the Latin roots inter, meaning between, and positum, meaning position. Literally, the translation is that which is placed between. Now, back in the day, an entrepot was a transshipment port or city or trading post where merchandise was imported, stored, traded, and usually exported again. As commercial cities, entrepôts thrived during the 17th and 18th centuries when mercantile shipping flourished between Europe and its colonial empires in the Americas. Now, sometimes I think that we forget Barbados was once a global economic powerhouse, this tiny little island in the Caribbean Sea. We led the sugarcane industry in the world and amassed untold wealth for the British Crown. Between 1627 and 1807, close to 400,000 Africans were brought to the island as slaves. Bridgetown was a commercial global transshipment hub for the re-exportation of many of these slaves to colonies in the Americas. It was also a beachhead for English colonization of the Americas, with European settlers heading to the Carolinas in particular and other parts of the United States from right here in Barbados. Again, you ask, how is this relevant to our subject? Listen very carefully. Barbados cannot transform itself using the modalities of the plantation. I'm going to say it again. Barbados cannot transform itself using the modalities of the plantation. They are incompatible with the very notion of innovation through digitalization. Barbados's existing institutional models are based on an oppressive colonial culture built to dehumanize, to disempower, to control, to exploit, to extract and export value, not to democratize or to expand a local economy to enrich the majority. Yet we keep trying to diffuse innovation in a culture steeped more in colonial thinking, behaviors, systems, and structures than those of a 21st century world where technological change is happening at the speed of light. Let's look at Barbados in 2021. The economy remains heavily dependent on tourism. The fallout from COVID-19 resulted in more than 50,000 unemployment claims from around 38,000 individuals and led to the payout of approximately $155 million in unemployment benefits. And this is at last count. At the end of 2020, we were told that unemployment was 18.5%. It could be higher now, I'm not sure. During the first quarter of 2021, the economy contracted by nearly 20%, with a 96% drop in visitor arrivals. The 2021 Central Bank of Barbados Economic Outlook stressed the need to accelerate Barbados's transition to a digital environment. But silos, inefficiencies, low productivity, and red tape remain. There are also, in my view, what I call high levels of innovation illiteracy, meaning that I don't think people and businesses, government, etc., civil society really understand what innovation is, how it works, how to fuel it in a country like Barbados. But the fact remains, change is no longer negotiable in a post-COVID world. Understanding these dynamics, last year the Prime Minister formed the Jobs and Investment Council, including a Digital Transformation and Solutions Committee, which he asked me to chair. Other members of the committee were Messrs. Mark Boyce, Adrian Gill, Will Hanschel, Jonathan Reed, Stephen Savory, and Paul M. Williams, Doctors Simon Natrum and Lamar White, and Professor Cardinal Ward. Highly accomplished innovators, technologists, entrepreneurs, with a strong love for and commitment to Barbados. It was a pleasure to work with them. Based on the challenge set by the PM for that committee, our mandate was fourfold: to deliver clear initiatives to get Barbadians back to work, to deliver clear initiatives for using technology and innovation to solve common everyday problems for Caribbean people, to deliver aspects of robotics and artificial intelligence practicable and relevant to Barbados, and to deliver guiding principles to govern Barbados's technological transformation. We ended up with a hugely ambitious outline strategy that was delivered to the PM. We imagined what Barbados might be if we didn't have any financial or other limitations curtailing our dreams for the future. We aimed for the moon and maybe a few galaxies far, far away. Our thinking was and remains that too often we as Bajans allow small thinking to limit our ambitions. Why can't we dream big and work all out to succeed? We believed that 3 focus areas would jumpstart and fuel Barbados's technology and innovation transformation. The first, accelerating prosperity. Private sector-led initiatives to create what we call dominant Caribbean-first technology companies with thousands of local salaried jobs and gig economy livelihoods. We also said we needed to accelerate efficiency with public sector-led initiatives to rapidly digitize the government of Barbados, improving the ease of doing business and citizens' economic participation. And then we talked about accelerating social good, doing good while doing well. Public and third sector-driven initiatives to import and nurture local deep tech companies that address key sustainable development deficits. but we recognized that there were issues related to implementation that had to be addressed for many of the reasons that I outlined earlier. So we made specific recommendations aimed at facing and fixing challenges to implementation. We argued that the government of Barbados needs highly skilled, highly motivated, technology-focused people, special tactical teams coming to work every day to achieve specific targets. But we understood that there were certain prerequisites or preconditions necessary for a technology and innovation economy to flourish. So we also recommended a large, very large innovation fund to finance national digital transformation and the rise of a digital economy. Also, the removal of barriers to people living their lives online first, including increased internet, smartphone, and card penetration, and classifying broadband as an essential service. We also needed to attract, we believe, and grow the right kinds of tech skills on the island, and also, again, to accelerate government's digitization of its records. Under accelerating prosperity, we argued that there are areas with high growth tech potential Barbados could leverage now. And we talked about digital finance, moving money, or accelerating the movement of money, e-commerce, accelerating the movement of goods, the gig economy, accelerating the movement of services, digital media, accelerating the movement of our culture and our creativity in Barbados and the Caribbean. And now, in hindsight, I would add things like cloud services, digital currencies, and blockchain solutions, which are areas that a lot can be done in right now. In accelerating efficiency, we believe that Barbados could increase national competitiveness by improving access to finance. And we suggested some online marketplaces and crowdfunding solutions that would treat to issues of equity and debt. We also talked about improving access to efficiency by creating custom software with artificial intelligence backends that could speed up how we deal with data. And to my mind, as I sit on the board of the QEH now, I believe there's huge potential for the health and wellness sector, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the QEH, polyclinics, to create solutions that benefit the patients and the citizens and residents of Barbados. And we also talked about improving access to data. And again, that has relation to the Data Protection Act, but also I noticed that journalists have been talking again about the Freedom of Information Act, and that is relevant in this regard as well. Under accelerating social good, we said that Barbados should leverage technology to tackle the most pressing challenges facing its people as identified by the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And these include issues like access to clean water and energy, climate, waste, fisheries, health, and crime. We believe that Barbados should also leverage technology to contribute to development of Barbados as a philanthropic hub for the Latin America and the Caribbean as well. And that is something that I believe that we can do now, just like Barbados created and formed itself into an international business and financial services sector years ago. And under accelerating social good, we also believed that we could develop world-class 360-degree impact assessment models capable of measuring social impact, again, that we could share with the world. My point, though, aside from all of that, is that I have met, particularly in the last three years of my time with government, amazing people doing things now, and they're not waiting on government to help them. So Judith Sergeant, I'm going to just share a few names, and these are just a few of the ones I know. There are so many others out there innovating. Judith Sergeant is a specialist in cloud computing, cloud security, and cloud training. And she's been telling us that there are opportunities now in this area, particularly with Amazon Web Services, who will train people for free to prepare them for work opportunities now so they can pivot. Then there's Gabriel Abed. He is the ambassador designate to the UAE, Barbados' ambassador designate to the UAE. But he is a global authority on central bank digital currencies and blockchain. He is the founder of a blockchain tech accelerator, and he knows about all of the opportunities in this area right now. Amit Atamchandani. He is building a register of Caribbean creatives at wecreate.org. Just decided to do this. And he is a specialist, a creative data analyst, and he's the one behind CaribbeanSignal.com. Then there's Ian Withers, the creator of the Shape application being used by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and without which I believe that government would not have been able to manage the COVID-19 crisis as well as it did. Sean Abbott, a talented graphic artist and illustrator and the builder of worlds, imaginary worlds. Omar Kennedy, he is the founder of Animacon, the Eastern Caribbean's largest pop culture convention. He also has an SME incubator for gaming and digital and a number of other areas. Byron Gibson, the founder of WeConnect. He is creating cutting-edge card solutions for the credit union movement now and designing them in particular to unlock and unleash the SME sector. And then there's Fabian Branch. He is the founder of WorkingCaribbean.com and a digital media guru. And he is my partner. We are building out now WorkingCaribbean.com to help people navigate job loss and to pivot to new areas of value creation and to make passive income, meaning make income while you sleep. All of these people are doing really cutting edge work in their areas. And I believe that the SBA would be well suited to invite some of them or each of them to come and talk with members about the possibilities. So I would like right now just to sum up by sharing with you 8 steps I believe can unlock value. The first is, and I stress again, we have to become comfortable interrogating ourselves. Innovation is about creating value, but it's also about recognizing the need to change ourselves. And we can't change ourselves if we won't question ourselves and each other, if we won't take a good, long, hard look in the mirror. We can't change ourselves if we refuse to listen. Out of our interrogation of ourselves and each other, we ought to recognize that value comes in many forms. It's not just digital and it's not just technology. So, number 2, we have to learn to recognize value. How can we innovate if we don't know value when we see it? And we treat people and ideas and things as if they have no worth or little worth. How can we recognize value anywhere when so often we do not recognize it in ourselves and when we treat each other like we don't have value? Value is so much more than money. Value is people, relationships, networks, ideas, skills, know-how, knowledge, good character. Value is about more than money. Number 3, I'd like us to reimagine the small in small business. Stop believing that small is less than or that it lacks value. Take the small-mindedness out of our thinking and attitudes and behaviors. Small doesn't mean weak or insufficient. We have to think creatively. We have to think outside the box and we have to be inspired. Small is agile and responsive. Small is beautiful. Small is the new big in terms of potential impact in niche areas of national, regional, and global specialization. I read somewhere, and Dr. Holder can correct me if I'm wrong, that Barbados's GDP is composed of 46% from the SME sector. We have to change our perceptions of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. They ought to see themselves, and we ought to see ourselves as an entire economy of possibilities and connections, creating value together. Number 4, we have to change the order of things. Change the order of things. Innovation is disruption. It is taking risk. It is upsetting the apple cart. Changing the order of things. Changing the order of what exists now. Joseph Schumpeter thought of innovation as a destructive force that helps economies grow. But how? By destroying the value of established companies and players and interests and thinking and ideas, and allowing new value and new thinking and new players and new ideas to form. He called this process creative destruction. When new value emerges, existing powers and players and ideas and thinking are destabilized and displaced, and we make room for new things and better things to flourish. Let's shake up about here. Let's change the order of things. Number 5, find a way. Digital finds a way. That is the very essence of digital technology. Digital information can be communicated using any medium designed to process digital signals, digital information, and digital content. Digital is not bound to a specific medium or channel. We can read our email, the paper, magazines, books, surf the web on any device that is digital, download and watch movies, listen to music, send text messages on our phones, listen to the radio, on the TV, etc. Digital finds a way, and we can too. Number 6, speak to the world. If Barbados in the 17th and 18th centuries could help make Britain and Europe rich, we can do it for ourselves as a 21st century tech, digital, and innovation hub here in Barbados and the Caribbean. But we have to redefine ourselves, what we do and how we do it in this frontier moment. We have the opportunity to leapfrog, to bypass other people's mistakes, to create our own value. We can speak to the world and show a better way. Number 7, embody the long view. People ask why China is so successful. There are a number of reasons, no doubt, but a key one is that its strategies are multi-generational, spanning generations, lifetimes, not just a few years. But our governments in Barbados and the Caribbean plan in 5-year election cycles, short-term time horizons designed to help them retain power. But this is very short-sighted and potentially destructive. There are some things that take time, and government cannot accelerate transformation for itself by itself. It takes time and external partners helping drive change. We ought to embody the long view, creating solutions that help government transform and reaping the rewards together. We, you and I, the SBA, the civil society, private sector, we are the change Barbados has been waiting for. And number 8, live for legacy. Our focus more than ever now ought to be to live for legacy, to create change and value for the generations that come after us. Our goal ought to be to contribute more than we consume and give more than we get. I don't know about you, but my next steps, by the grace of God, are about legacy. That's our focus for UNCTAD's Creative Industries Trade Digitization Forum. And that's the focus of the next platforms my partners and I are building. Stay tuned. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for sharing some perspectives with us, giving us your 8 points that you propose can really help to have that paradigm shift, if you will, in understanding and appropriating innovation, giving us an idea of some of the work being done by several professionals here on island and elsewhere, and overall sharing with our MSMEs on the call, what they can possibly consider as they look at new business models that embrace innovation. It is all about how to monetize, how to make money through the use of innovative techniques and drawing on the digital space and the digital platforms that are available. I took note of the theme that ran through the presentation. Innovation is disruption. And yes, it was Trumpeter that talked first about the significance, the importance, the impact, if you will, of disruption, disrupting how we do things, disrupting the norms, disrupting, the modus operandi even, and the importance of innovation in that vein. So we've had a pretty extensive presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now your turn to pose your question. I'm going to go to the chat section now. You pose your questions, make your comments, and that we can put these forward now to Dr. Bab to hear her perspectives on these. Remember that we're looking at innovation through digitalization. How can we really monetize innovation at this point in time? And our audience, as we all know, comprise micro, small, and medium enterprises who are right now thinking through the business models that ought to be considered for the future. As we all know, we are, as a country and as a world, impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic. And that for sure has been a disruption, if you will, to how business is being done. From where I sit, I've been seeing some firms really innovating how they deliver goods and services to the consuming public. But I'm convinced that we have to do more. I'm convinced that though COVID-19 has given us a platform, if you will, and has been catalytic in the way we do business, to me, it should serve really as that eye opener to the fact that the world has changed and the way business is being done has changed. And therefore, we also have to change. We also have to adapt. We also have to adopt new models, and models that, in my view, are germane and have their foundation in the use of technology and digital transformation. For the private sector colleagues on the call, I'll say to you that we cannot allow government to outdo us. At the end of the day, we know that government has an agenda to try to digitalize its operations and the way that it delivers services to the public. And I am of the view that the private sector ought really to be at the forefront of that for our country, and not have government way ahead of us in the use of technology. As was said before in the presentation, small is the new big. Small, we've often said, has its advantages. You're able to adapt. You're able to change quickly, you're nimble. So it has its benefits, and therefore, I believe that this is our time. This is really our time to innovate and to bring new types of models of service and good development as well as delivery. So let's get to our questions and our comments at this time. I know that Julian is on the call. Julian is with us every month. Julian, I'm thankful for your continued support and the participation. Let's hear a question from Julian. He's saying, hi, digitalization by innovation is, of course, key to any form of business. Yes, we agree with you. However, what about the impact on staff morale due to job losses? So that's the first part of that question. What about the impact on staff morale due to job losses? And what about the reduced personal interface or interaction with clients, especially clients who are not tech savvy, which could adversely affect customer service? So that's a two-part question for you, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Senator Holder. I think that you would be very sensitive to the fact yourself, having spent so much time up at the University of the West Indies, that we can't talk about digital transformation without talking about reskilling and retooling. And I think while government has a responsibility to do that, and I know it launched the National Training Initiative that has been rebranded the National Transformation Initiative. But I think that our associations like yours and what you're doing now, but businesses themselves as well, need to take time to reskill and retool people. And for every job that is lost, human beings can learn as well and can be taught and can be trained. And there is so much more that can be done as a company expands its mandate, that what you ought to do is be retraining people to do other things that once the technology takes over their jobs. And the whole country, Barbados as a nation, developed countries actually put out skills reports every year that talk about where are the growth areas in economies and with technologies and are the skill sets and the training of their young people, their people in universities, keeping pace with that change. As far as I know, Barbados and the Caribbean does not do that. And we really ought to make it a priority, not just to create a skills retraining association or entity or agency, but to do the research. What kinds of growth areas do we want to see in Barbados and the Caribbean? Where are the needs going to be? What kind of sectors do we intend to grow? And start training people for those sectors before the need arises.
Okay. Julian, I trust you've heard that comment, that response. I'm sure you'll come back to us if you need any follow-up as well. Let's hear what Sharon now has to say. Thanking you for the presentation. She's a partner in KASP Accounting and Estate Planners, a technology accounting and apps innovation firm. And, she wants to know, just bear with me as I try to get the information up. How can that type of business be a part of this transformation and this transformational journey and network that you would have mentioned before? You talked about several persons who are doing some great things.
Tell me
How can
the
other
kind of
firms get
business
involved?
again? An account, what kind of firm?
Accounting and estate planners firm.
Well, that's interesting. Certainly that there are small businesses today need a whole kind of new training about how to manage their accounts, certainly in the digital space. One of the things that I think accounting firms can do is start to lobby also government for some of the changes that need to be made along with the SBA and others to kind of reconfigure this economy. I have had a number of my global contacts and others talk about opportunities in new spheres and new sectors that have not yet been imagined in the Caribbean. And why the same way that we had developed, and I said this earlier, the international business and financial services sector. Why can we not do research to see how is the accounting sector evolving? And things like even cryptocurrencies and how blockchain is being used and so on. What is the accounting sector doing to understand these changes? I read somewhere, and again, Gabriel would be better able to, I'm sorry, Gabriel would be better able to speak about the cryptocurrencies and the changes. I'm trying to turn off my phone, sorry, and the changes that those have occasioned. But there's an entire regulatory environment that needs to be changed in Barbados and the Caribbean. And rather than wait on the government to do that change, I think that accounting firms and other kinds of financial services firms need to approach government and say, this is the regulatory environment that exists now. But here is where cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all these things are heading, and these are the changes that need to be made. Were you aware, for example, that on that index of the circulation of money, the M1 index, that some weeks ago, cryptocurrencies overtook the Australian dollar in terms of their diffusion in world economies? This is a massive change in terms of how we account, how we do taxes, how we do a number of things. And I think that our sector here ought to be doing research in that area to understand the implications before we fall off the edge of the cliff. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I'm sure Sharon will come back to me if there's a need for a follow-up. Here's Cornelius now asking the question, interesting enough, is there a plan to take this gospel message to government? And I believe he meant banking and the banking sector, to improve the way that they relate to companies. Do you have any idea of a plan in that vein?
I would ask the question, do you have a plan, and does he have a plan to take this gospel? We are the ones that have bank accounts and credit union accounts and so on. We need to start to agitate for change and to present solutions that meet the needs of our small businesses and the private sector. So I would kind of turn it around and say, if, for example, the SBA and other organizations and your members think this is an area that requires attention, let us put together something to agitate and lobby and get the kind of response that we want. I know, Senator Holder, you and I have talked for years about the idea of changing government's procurement policies for small businesses. And there is a lot that can be done in the digital space and using digital platforms to make that happen. And some of your very members and people in the private sector can help government build the necessary platforms to unleash that. But we ought not to sit and wait passively. We ought to find even the financing to build it ourselves, and then perhaps government will come on board.
What about the education sector and drilling this down, as it were, making this granular, to our children, our primary school children, secondary, etc. That from that very level we can begin the process of training the next generation to use technology.
Absolutely. One of the platforms that I am designing right now, and I'm hoping we're now building out the business model and hoping to get financing for it. But it is, for want of a better term, a creative innovation, a tech accelerator, bringing those things together. But an important part of it is actually training up the next generation. So going into schools, I think there's some work. Dr. Cardinal Ward has done some good work with things like robotics and so on. And there are other people that are doing that. But this is more about understanding innovation and understanding creativity and how to think like a business person, an entrepreneur. How can you take your idea and move it into a minimum viable product? And that's something that, for my legacy, is the next chapter of what I am looking to do. And a number of us in the private sector are building those kinds of platforms. And we would be very eager to work with you and with your members to see those things evolve in Barbados. Another one, I mentioned that platform as well, where we are looking at Working Caribbean and just putting up little bits of content and doing some podcasts, telling people, look at what's happening in the world. If people can make money in America and other places doing X, you can do it too. So we're going to start very granularly by doing some little courses and podcasts and so to share with people how they can make both active and passive income, because you're not going to get rich working hard, hard, hard. You need to have your money work hard, hard, hard for you, so that when you're sleeping, you're making income. And that's some of the learning that we are going to bring out for the sector.
Mm-hmm. All right, Deirdre say, querying what kind of digital technologies would be useful in the area of social services and social protection, which often address the needs of the vulnerable within the society.
Okay. So at Ministry of Innovation and Science and Smart Technology, I had said that I was the lead on conceptualizing a Barbados Tech Accelerator. And we studied a number of models around the world. And we went and spent some time in Scotland with the CivTech Scotland entity there. And they put out challenges to people. Ministries and departments of government say, here's a challenge that we cannot solve. Who in this entire country has a solution? And you don't have to be a businessman. You don't have to know anything about the area, but just come up with an idea. And they put a team around you and move it through the process. And if it is viable, you end up creating a minimum viable product. And one of the things that astonished me was how many apps, mobile apps that companies built to deal with social issues. Some of them, for example, were about youth mental health and wellness. Some were about how to manage Alzheimer's for the elderly, just a number of areas. So to my mind, what we need to have is not necessarily a technology, but an accelerator or somewhere where people can say, this is our need, where's the idea? And people bring the idea and you work it through with them. And sometimes the solution is technology-based. Sometimes the innovation is not technology-based, but it solves the problem. And so rather than think of every technology as the answer for everything, I think we need to think about creative thinking and innovation as the answer, and creating frameworks and systems and structures that allow people's idea to be translated into value.
All right. Let's go to a subject now that is very dear to my heart. I recall sometime last year when we first begun the process of preparing, transitioning, and so on following COVID-19. We looked a lot at cybersecurity. And I'm hearing Jay Evelyn asking a very important question. Has the importance of security been recognized when applying the technologies, both from the standpoint of laws and policies for individuals and companies? And Dr. Bobby would agree that we are exposed to international media. We've seen what would have happened in the US with the most recent cybersecurity attack, and the impact on citizens and so on, accessing power. So what has been done, if anything, and what ought to be done to address the issue of security from the laws and policy perspective?
Well, from the laws and policy perspective, I know that government is looking at relooking and redrafting all of the laws to do with digital. I think I had seen an ad in the paper that put out requested expressions of interest to look again at the suite of legislative solutions and regulations around certain areas. I believe it would include the notion of cybersecurity and treat to that. But again, I hesitate to have us depend just on laws and regulation. You know what the greatest threat to people's security in a cyber environment is, or an online environment? Is people, individuals, workers in your company who share their passwords, who don't secure their computers and so on. So I think one of the first steps can be training at the level of the workforce of how each of us must take responsibility for our online safety. And children as well, young people, and let that movement grow from there. I know that there's an awareness of the threats and the concerns with respect to cybersecurity, but sometimes we're trying to move so quickly that that might be one of the things we put on the back burner, and we ought not to do it. And I know that the government has set up a whole task force, and it has membership from the BDF and other people who are keeping an eye on this and rolling out an entire strategy. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that there is a strategy right now from, I think, I speak subject to correction, but from an international organizations working with the BDF and others to put together a strategy that ought to be before the Prime Minister now.
Okay, I am seeing a question here. What suggestions do you have for sparking those paradigm shifts? You know, this is going to require a mental shift, if you will, and how we think. You took us back to our colonial past, and you know, given the fact that we understand the history of our country, and how that history has informed culture and behaviors and norms. What suggestions then do you posit that will spark, you know, that paradigm shift that is needed mentally? I think the question from the member is a mental shift. How do we really bring about that paradigm shift?
I cannot speak for anyone, Senator Holder, but I'm speaking for myself. I'm not going to tell your viewing public and the SBA my age, but I have been wrong long enough that my thing now is about legacy. So I can tell you what I am going to do. My legacy is about helping to spark that shift by just teaching and training and talking with and empowering the next generation. And that is what we need to do. You know what? I have spent, again, 17 to 18 years writing policies for government and for companies, strategies. You know what? Barbados has enough policies and strategies. What we need is execution, implementation. Somebody said to me, I had a very interesting chat just this week with one of the people from my network overseas. And he said, you know what, we have come to the conclusion in our country that we don't need any more policies. We just need to do stuff. If you know that there is, for example, an issue in Barbados with poverty or with something to do with children, don't write a policy about it. Go and do it. Do something about it. So what I would like to see done is your organization and others like yours and individuals mounting challenges for themselves. There's a problem. I'm going to find a solution for it. And part of what I will be doing is helping, hopefully, to fuel that kind of change of mindset that we understand we are not dependent on a government to do things for ourselves that we can do. Let us collaborate and work together, but also it's important to ask yourself, interrogate yourself. We have to ask ourselves, because very often, you know, Bajans are real good at pointing the finger, you know, you did this and you did that. We need to ask ourselves, what am I doing that is not effective that I need to change? How am I treating people that is not empowering that needs to change? How am I not taking the initiative? You are a church woman, so you know the story, Senator Holder, when Moses went complaining to God that the people asking for water, and God said to him, "What is that in your hand?" We have a lot in our hands that we're not using. And the change begins with us. And when you begin to see that change grow and you reach the tipping point, is when we will know that Barbados is transformed.
It's interesting that you use that story of Moses. Also remember that same story about giving the people water. Moses got so angry that he struck the rock.
He did it.
And in striking the rock, he lost the opportunity to get into the promised land.
There you go. So we need to guard
so
ourselves in that regard, ma'am.
the follow-up from that same from Faith to that earlier question was, what do you think about more seriously promoting our historical relevance to building wealth of the so-called developed nations? What do you think of seriously promoting our historical relevance to building wealth? I gather that, that's a follow-on from the earlier question. So
yeah, but I'm not sure she's asking about reparations or not. I'm not sure. That's a different issue. But or she could be asking the question if she could clarify. But it may be that some people, with respect to culture purists, culturalists, and people, historians sometimes feel you should not profit off of a history that is very painful or very negative and so on. But the history and the culture make us who we are. And I think that there is something worthwhile about, again, interrogating that and sharing that with people. And I don't see any reason with charging a fee or asking for a donation for us to kind of grow and to develop that kind of content. If that was the question,
yeah. I got the impression as I drilled down further that the focus is on helping our people to reshape our collective perspective, she says, of self. I'm getting the impression as I go through it, the notion of helping our people who would have worked so hard in the past, and we have the historical track record to show that yes, we would have contributed to the wealth creation of developed countries, developed nations, and how can we now, drawing from that, help with the reshaping of our own perspectives of ourselves that haven't done that for years.
Yes.
We really have it within us to come together and don't like to use the cliches, but to pivot, if you will, and to reimagine ourselves, reimagine our destinies, reimagine what we want to be and where we want to go. We have that ability. We've done it. The history shows, and you pointed out, that for hundreds of years, we were the masters at the sugarcane industry, at producing to help another country's economy. We did it. Our foreparents did it. Why is it so difficult now for us to do it for ourselves?
Well, there's the issue, doing it for ourselves. We were not taught to do for ourselves, were we, Senator Holder? We were taught to do for other people. And we were taught that we do not have value, other people have value. So you see it repeated in the country where worth and value is from the outside, but people who are here have less value and less worth. And we need to change that. I know the way we're going to change it, we call it a hearts and minds campaign, that we have to just tell the stories. America did not just emerge as America. Over 200 years of telling themselves a story about themselves that has made America, now it's beginning to fracture. And you see the breaks in it. But I remember when I studied in America, I was so struck. Every little Ivy League game or little league baseball game I went to, I saw they would play the national anthem and the youngsters hand over heart, hats off and heads up, singing the national anthem. I know that we sing our national anthem here, but I do not know that the value of who we are as a people is embedded in our psyches, like in other countries. And so I have always argued that this is one of the critical roles for the cultural and creative industries in this country, to tell our stories now with the online platforms and people from all over the world that can view your content. Tell the stories of how we do for ourselves. Tell the stories of where we have come from, the history. Don't be afraid of our plantation history. We have come far from there, but tell it in song, tell it in dance, tell it in theater, tell it in stories. And that way, I think we also get a view of ourselves that is more and better than the one that we have now. Hearts and Minds campaign, that is what all of us need to be about.
Actually, that question from Faith is challenging me to think of another topic in the future that we can possibly come back and address, because you're right. The our self-awareness, our perspectives of self really need to be addressed, in order for us to really embrace the kind of transformation that is required, that we understand and appreciate that we're doing it for ourselves at the end of the day. And we're not doing it for colonial masters as our foreparents had to, on the plantation. So why is it so challenging, for us to do it for ourselves?
I
That's
believe, I
interesting.
believe, Dr. Holder, I don't believe that many Barbadians, a lot of Barbadians, we do not understand that we are beautiful. You, Dr. Holder, are beautiful. You have so much to offer. You have tremendous value. How many people in your daily life tell you that? That you have changed my life, you touched me, you made a contribution here, we value you, we appreciate you. Would you tell us your story? I would love to sit down with you and for you to tell me the story of your evolution, and then take little snippets of that and put it out there for people to understand. We didn't just turn up grown, we went through a process and an evolution, and that evolution, that lifelong learning never stops. And when we begin to recognize value in ourselves and in each other, the world could not stop Barbados, this little island, from taking over the global economy, in my view.
All right. All right, the questions are coming in rather quickly now. I know that we are a few minutes past our closing time, but if you can spare us another 5 minutes or so, let's get a question coming in from Micheline, and this is actually from our Facebook feed. Micheline is asking, since YouTube is an option for generating income, how is it that in Barbados that option seems not to be available to us? And since it's not available, how do we get around that to be able to capitalize on it?
See, so there, I would love for us or for you to put, I'm saying us, like if I need to come back to the SBA and for us to put together a presentation on that particular thing. People like Fabian Branch and those can answer that and how to get around some of those issues. But I think the biggest issue right there is one that we need to treat to in Barbados with respect to things like foreign exchange controls on how we buy and spend and pay and so on. But there are also issues on that platform that we need to address that is configured largely for America and for people in developed countries. And this is one of the reasons why we said at UNCTAD that we wanted to have the theme that we have addressing inequality, because these platforms exist, but very often we do not have access. It is either make it possible for us to have access or we create our own. And so that is one of the conversations that I would love to see us have, and to hand over to ministers of trade as well to push for some change in that regard. But ultimately, I believe that Barbados and the Caribbean ought to be building their own platforms and have people then begging us to come and be a part of theirs.
Mhm. Interesting perspective. I'm sure Micheline will come back to me if she has a follow up. But let's say Andrea. Andrea is giving us now, in my view, a very practical question here because yes, all the talk about innovation, there's a cost to it. You know, there's a cost. So Andrea is in essence saying to us that small businesses obviously will find it difficult to locate the capital for improvement and innovation. So how will they find or secure funds to protect and safeguard their digital property, their digital intellectual property, and the platforms that are being promoted? I mean, you can't speak for government, but the follow-up is that, what is government prepared to do to assist MSMEs in this regard?
I honestly that believe that because of the size of the economy right now and the fact that digital is not, the digital transformation has not yet taken off. So there are some areas that I believe government does have to make interventions. And I believe that that is one of them. We put in our proposal, and I can't give the details of it because it is not a public document. And I kind of went out on a limb here, sharing a few of the ideas in the Digital Transformation and Solutions Committee report. But we put a dollar figure on the money that we believe government needed to provide that would also be used, an innovation fund for things like the very question that was posed. And I do believe that as we look at reconfiguring this economy, that it would be useful for government, even if it has conversations with entities like the CDB and the IDB to set up an innovation fund that part of it might be linked to low interest loans, but also part of it specializing in grants for small businesses to be able to do that innovation and to move to the next level. I do think that is important. And there's some things you can do that are not that expensive, but there's some things that are going to take resources. And I do believe that's one of the areas that government can work in, but in partnership with some of the regional players.
Yeah, I'm sure Cornelius would welcome those comments because he had some follow-up questions here, really suggesting that government has to play a greater role in facilitating this revolution and this transformation that we're talking about. They're the ones that set the laws. They're the one that, in essence, determine the policies and so on. They more or less set the wicket, to use his analogy, the cricket wicket, for businesses to function, for businesses to operate. So they have in essence to step up to the plate. We want to innovate. We want to be able to pay for goods and services online and so on and so forth. But then, as he said, you go into a government line and you have to spend 2 hours or 3 hours. So you're defeating the purpose. So government, he's advocating, has to play a greater role in the transformational process to primarily to have that enabling environment for the private sector now to operate.
And my point, Senator Holder, I will say again, I have come to the conclusion, I believed it before, but now I am fully and firmly persuaded government cannot change itself by itself. And so I believe that some of the very solutions to government's issues with respect to accelerating efficiency lie within this very small business association, the sector and the private sector. And rather than wait for government to change, we need to push and say, here is what we want to do. Here is a solution that can be built or that we are building. It's going to cost X, Y, or Z. The SBA or whoever else supports it. This is our member. This is what we need. And push for it and agitate for it. Government needs to change, but it cannot change on its own. It needs our help from outside, not from within. You're smiling, so I'm wondering whether you disagree or you agree.
No, I don't disagree. I agree that we need to have strong advocates because that's what it is. You know, the lobby groups in the metropolitan cities and so on are very powerful. All of us are on television, watching the international news and media and so on. And we see the power of the lobby groups, and we know that they're able, for good or bad, influence change.
But Senator
So
Holder,
you know,
can I
so I
change
quite
that word?
agree. I know that our
Can
small
I change that
countries,
word?
we our lobby groups now need to play a greater role, but we also know that in our small economies, sometimes it is not that easy. But I take your point and agree with you that government will not change on its own, and you need to have the pressure coming from outside to influence change.
May I ask you, perhaps a change of language might assist us in a change of circumstance? And rather than the SBA think of itself as a lobby group, think of itself as a disruptor. And if you think of yourself as a disruptor rather than a lobbyist, then perhaps there's some different things that you could do.
Right. But Micheline came back at me and she's saying that YouTube monetization is available in Jamaica. So, given the fact that it's available in Jamaica, then you know why is this a challenge in Barbados? I think
No, I think
that's a good
again, I
comment.
think, and there are others that can speak to this more fully and than I could, but the issue has to do with how we deal with the foreign exchange and the laws and the rules and the regulations and the banking system that we have here that has to change. And that's a massive area. And I know that there are people, and I don't think he would be offended if I called his name, Gabriel Abed and others that have been trying to lobby for some changes in how we regulate and do things. And I would suggest to you that while there may be resistance now, I think as we begin to see digital currencies take off, there is going to be, we are almost on the edge of the cliff. And why is it that we have to wait for things to fall apart before we proactively say, look, this is the direction they're going. Here's what Jamaica is doing. Barbados can do X, Y, or Z and start to change our national framework to address these issues. So again, I would recommend that you have a session just on that, because certainly with respect to the creative industries in Barbados and other parts of the Caribbean, that would be a great change agent right now.
Yeah. Well, let me take the final comment from Kathy Daniel, and actually she is, you know, somewhat agreeing because she's actually calling for us to have a separate presentation on YouTube monetization. Because, as she rightly said, there are issues with foreign exchange controls and so forth. I believe Barbados has been touted as what the third most secure jurisdiction domicile when it comes to foreign exchange controls. I'm not so sure if that's a good thing now. That might have been a good thing 20 years ago and so on. But now, with all of the disruption that is occurring, I'm not so sure that that is a good thing. We need these controls liberalized so that we can, you know, see the kind of opportunity for persons to trade using various forms of monetary transactions. So, you know, that needs to be considered. But the question following on from that is, can we use alternative platforms like the Money to access international sources of legitimate income?
Well, again, I really would be keen to have you have Ambassador Designate Gabriel Abed come and chat with folk before he leaves for the UAE. I suppose even if he's there, that he can still have a conversation with you. But this is one of the areas that is dear to his heart and that he is determined to change in the Caribbean. So he has been having a number of conversations and pushing proposals around how the blockchain can help to change the regulatory environment in the entire Caribbean and make things easier and quicker, more transparent and distributed as the technologies enable. So I would encourage that these sorts of initiatives that we as a sector and as companies and associations need to support. Have a conversation and say, well, what does this look like? Can we combine with you to put together a proposal or create some kind of mechanism that is going to bring change here? I think it is one of the important growth areas going forward. It is not going away. It is going to disrupt the entire, it already has started, but I don't want to say too much in this forum on it,
All right.
but you would be surprised at the people who are going around and circumventing and innovating, people that you wouldn't expect in Barbados, that are doing jobs that you might not think they are actually trading in cryptocurrencies and buying and selling and doing things in the States that quote unquote the regulations don't allow, but they find a way. And this is what drives an economy underground. And by ignoring it, we are going to end up not shrinking the Barbados, not growing the Barbados economy, but shrinking it.
Yeah. Very good thoughts. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Annalie Bab, for sharing with us today. Folks, we've been talking about innovation through digitalization. We looked extensively at what's happening, some of the key players in the market, and some of the innovative products that they're bringing, and systems and processes that they're bringing to the marketplace. And we understood from this that we definitely need to return to have some follow-up discussions on digital processes, digital models that we can adopt primarily as small firms to improve the delivery of goods and services. And we want to be able to improve at the end of the day. We want to be able to be competitive. We want to be able to grow and transform our operations and by extension our country. So we will definitely consider what follow-ups we need to do in this particular subject area. Thank you again for your questions and your comments. Thank you for staying on the call with us, as was shared before. And even that you miss any part of this, you can watch the entire presentation on our website, www.sba.bb. We have SBA TV there. You can go on and you can see this session as well as any of the previous webinars that we would have had during this series. You can listen out for when we come again in the month of June with another informative topic, another thought-provoking session to help us navigate this trajectory of growth. I thank sincerely Dr. Bab for being with us today and for sharing her wealth of knowledge, as the sharp biodata I shared earlier is any testimony. You know that this is someone that is very, very, very competent and well versed in the area of innovation and digitalization. Remember, innovation is disruption. So if it is that we want to innovate, it means that we are going to disrupt what has been happening, what was the norm, what was the modus operandi. We have to disrupt it in order for innovation to come forth. There's no innovation without disruption. Remember, we're asking you please to stay on the call for at least 5 minutes and complete a very short survey. This is going to help us with our evaluation and will help us also as we plan the future sessions, future webinars in our educational series. So it has been a pleasure having you with us today from the Small Business Association and my team here, technical team working behind the scenes. Thank you so much for sharing a part of your day with us. Thank you again, Dr. Bab, and we look forward to seeing you again in another session sometime soon. Once again, thank you so much. God bless. Have a good day. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.